Don't go around blaming women all the time for your own incompetence, Suliu scoffed, then gradually faded away into nothingness. As for the other true spirits, they chatted briefly with one another, then departed as well. In the sky above the rubble that used to be the mountain face, the members of the 8 holy tribes were all looking on with tightly furrowed brows. Several thousand feet away, Nuo Yifan was also observing what was happening in the distance while concealed in her gray cloak, and she was very relieved by what she saw. On a lone peak that was tens of thousands of kilometers away from the Dark Star Canyon, Han Li was seated with his legs crossed under an enormous tree. His eyes were closed, and his entire body was enshrouded within a layer of golden light. Right at this moment, his eyes suddenly sprang open as a mocking sneer appeared on his face. "Why are you smiling like that, uncle?" Jintong asked with a perplexed expression. "The beast race has decided to attack me," Han Li replied. A hint of disappointment appeared on Jintong's face upon hearing this, and she turned with tightly furrowed brows to face Xiao Bai, who was grinning from ear to ear. In the face of Jintong's cold glare, Xiao Bai hurriedly wiped the smile from its own face as it said in a careful manner, "I win the bet this time, so?" Jintong harumphed coldly as she raised a hand to toss a crystal that was brimming with spiritual qi toward Xiao Bai. "These beast race bastards are nothing more than a bunch of ungrateful dogs," she cursed in a furious voice, making sure to put heavy emphasis on the words, ungrateful dogs, and Xiao Bai was just about to swallow the crystal. But he almost choked on it upon hearing this. All of a sudden, it was beginning to regret making a bet against Jintong on whether the beast race would target Han Li. "I possess several true spirit bloodlines, and I'm accompanied by a Pixiu that's yet to reach full maturity, both of which will be immensely beneficial for their king's recovery. On top of that, they resent humans no less than they do the insect race, so it would have been very unwise to stay there." Han Li said with a smile, "Your wisdom and foresight are truly astounding." Xiao Bai praised after swallowing the crystal. "Since when did you become such a suck-up, Xiao Bai?" Jintong asked as she raised an eyebrow. "Ever since I began following Master, my life has really taken a turn for the better. Not only do I have treasures to eat every day, I also get to enjoy the protection of someone as brave and powerful as yourself. This is something that I wouldn't even have dared to imagine in the past," Xiao Bai replied while putting on an earnest facade. Jintong was very satisfied with this response, and she nodded with a pleased expression. "I can definitely agree with that. By the way, that substitution method that you used was incredible. Master! With that Tao warrior dressed in your clothes and disguised with that mask, as well as the substitution talisman in its body, it would have been enough to fool anyone," Xiao Bai praised. "All right, stop trying to flatter me. Now that we've left the beast race, we'll no longer be able to use their true spirits to deal with that gold-devouring immortal, so we're in an even worse situation than before," Han Li said as he rose to his feet. "Uncle, I can sense that thing is slowly recovering its power," Jintong said in a concerned voice. "I didn't refine the origin separation law chains myself, so I definitely wouldn't have been able to use them as effectively as Feng Tiandu. On top of that, given how powerful the gold-devouring immortal is, we can't expect the chains to seal it for long, so I'm sure it'll come after us again before too long," Han Li sighed. "What should we do then?" Jintong hurriedly asked in an urgent voice. "At this point, we've already received some maps of the beast race's territory, so we'll just have to take things one step at a time. If we can buy enough time for me to recover all of my Time Dao runes, then we'll have some chances of taking it by surprise and severely wounding it before fleeing the primordial land," Han Li replied. Jintong nodded in response, then asked, "Where do we go now?" Han Li didn't immediately reply. Instead, he flipped a hand over to produce a map, then examined it for a moment before musing. According to the map, the area inhabited by the beast race and the insect race is still only on the outskirts of the primordial land, so we'll be getting deeper into the primordial land if we travel southward. In any case, let's get out of this area as quickly as possible. After that, he swept a sleeve through the air to summon the green jade flying carriage, and after the 3 of them had all flown onto the carriage, it set off as a streak of green light. Close to half a day later, Han Li was standing at the front of the carriage, and immortal spiritual power was flowing incessantly into the carriage from the bottom of his feet to support its flight. The spiritual patterns on the flying carriage were flashing incessantly, releasing strands of green spiritual light that formed a light barrier around the carriage. The carriage was flying so quickly that the surrounding scenery had become very blurry and impossible to discern. But at this moment, Han Li's brows remained tightly furrowed. While the carriage was flying at an incredible speed, he knew that this was far from its limit. In fact, he had most likely only unleashed 20% to 30% of its power. The former owner of this treasure was a high zenith stage Jade Immortal, so it only made sense that a mid-golden immortal cultivator like him wouldn't be able to unleash its full power. This level of speed was sufficient for normal purposes, but it was rather lacking given the current circumstances. All of a sudden, a thought occurred to Han Li, and he raised a hand to summon Taoist Xie amid a flash of golden lightning. "Pilot the carriage for me," Han Li instructed, then took a few steps backward before sitting down. Taoist Xie's immortal spiritual power was far inferior to Han Li's, and after it took over from him, the spiritual light radiating from the carriage instantly dimmed a little, while its speed was also noticeably reduced. Han Li paid no heed to this, as he flipped a hand over to summon his Dragon 5 mask before putting it on, then conjured up a crimson light screen in front of himself. Aside from the additional earthly list included on the crimson light screen, it was no different from the screens of light conjured up using other transient guild masks. From there, Han Li released a mission, searching for a way for golden immortal cultivators to use high zenith stage immortal treasures, and he was offering quite a handsome reward. After that, he turned his gaze to the exchange section on the light screen before carefully combing through it. Moments later, a stack of yellow array tools, a white umbrella immortal treasure, and a green jade lock appeared on the ground beside him, all of which were giving off formidable spiritual power fluctuations. Jin Tong's eyes immediately lit up at the sight of these treasures, but it was clear that they were useful to Han Li, so she could only suppress her own desires and wrench her gaze away from the treasures. Close to a day quickly flew by. The crimson light screen rippled momentarily before fading away, following which Han Li removed his mask before stowing it away. Jin Tong immediately approached him while riding atop Xiaobai, then asked with a curious expression, "You spent a lot of immortal origin stones, uncle? What did you end up buying?" "Those things are all useful to me, so I can't let you eat them," Han Li replied as he swept a sleeve through the air, stowing away all of the items laid out on the ground in front of him. A displeased pout appeared on Jin Tong's face. "Can you sense anything from that gold-devouring immortal?" Han Li asked. A grim look immediately appeared in Jin Tong's eyes as she replied, "It seems to be recovering its power at a faster rate than before, but the good news is that it still hasn't come after us yet." "How long can you stay in Xiaobai's stomach for?" Han Li asked with a solemn expression. "There's a special type of power in the internal space in Xiaobai's stomach, and even though it can't digest my body, it does affect my soul, so I can only stay in there for an hour at a time at most before having to come back out," Jin Tong replied as she patted Xiaobai on the head. Han Li's brows furrowed slightly upon hearing this. While inside Xiaobai's internal space, Jin Tong was able to escape the detection of the gold-devouring immortal, and that was very useful. But an hour was simply too short a time frame to make a substantial difference. Essentially, this meant that the gold-devouring immortal would be able to lock onto them once every hour. "Is there any way for you to extend the duration that Jin Tong can remain in your body?" Han Li asked as he turned to Xiaobai. "My internal space is an innate ability of our Pixiu tribe, but unfortunately, I still haven't reached full maturity yet, so I'm unable to completely control everything within this space. An hour is already the best that I can do. If we want to extend that duration, then we'll have to think of something else," Xiaobai replied with a shake of its head. "In that case, as long as we can fortify your soul, you should be able to stay longer in Xiaobai's body. That's something that's easily achievable." Han Li said as he summoned his reincarnation palace mask before putting it on again. And the crimson light screen was conjured up a second time. He turned to the exchange section once again, and after some searching, he quickly spotted what he was looking for. Soul armor talisman? What's that? Jin Tong asked with a curious expression. Give it a try, it might be useful for you. Han Li replied with a faint smile. In order to deal with the backlash from the spirit refinement technique, Han Li had searched extensively for items that had effects on one's soul. And during his search, he had seen these soul armor talismans. As the name suggested, this was a special talisman that could enhance the defenses of the soul. It was very effective, but also extremely expensive, costing 500 Immortal Origin stones per talisman, and each one could only last a short time. Han Li immediately purchased one such talisman, and it quickly emerged before him in a teleportation array amid a flash of white light. There were some cloud designs etched onto the talisman's surface, and it was giving off a peculiar aura alongside a burst of formidable spiritual power fluctuations.